Okay, good evening, everybody in the room and on Zoom. So it is my pleasure to chair this research seminar and to welcome Maria Cieśla, did I say it correctly? Okay, who is a visiting fellow who will be with us in Southampton at the Parkes Institute for a month and a bit more than a month. And who will tonight give a paper on early modern Jewish-Christian relations in Sluck, which is a town in Belarus. And Maria did her PhD at the Historical Institute of the Polish Academy of Science, and she has been working there since 2011, and has also done some research and been a research fellow at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and the Hebrew Institute. The floor is yours. I will just share your presentation.
I put that I can put
I
it
will,
in
yeah.
some way that I can see. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation, giving me the opportunity to speak to you, and for the very nice introduction. I will basically today speak a little bit about a broader project, which is a microhistorical project about Jewish-Christian relations in the town of Słuck. And specifically, I will speak about the economy, like the economical ties between Jews and Christians, and this is one of the parts of this broader project. I will start with the description of the whole project. I will say several words about my methodological approach, and then go to the sources and tell you more details about my research. In my project, I'm analyzing the functioning of the Jews within a Christian town and the Jewish-Christian social relation in this town. It is a microhistorical project focusing on the town of Słuck in the Grand Duchy of Lithuania in the 17th century. Okay, it's working. Sorry. Okay, I assume that the relationship between Jews and Christians was created in everyday life, and in actions determined contextually in certain spaces in the town. This is very important. This is like practice, looking at the actions done by Christians and Jews. I have different sources, and analyzing these sources, I can show conflicting and overlapping relations between Jews and Christians in the early modern town. My approach disputes a static structural way of analyzing contacts between those two groups, and disputes the predefined categories. I think the most important in my project are such categories as integration and toleration. I analyze different social spaces. I have different parts of this project. I'm starting with topography, neighborhood, then with economy. This is a very big part of this project, very important part. Then I have a part about power government courts. It means the power relations in the town and the use within this power relation. And then I analyze tensions and conflicts on different levels in the town. I did already an intensive archival research. I did my research in Minsk. It is not possible to do it any longer. I have to stop my my research there. I did some research in Vilnius, Jerusalem, and Warsaw. The town archive is a very rich town archive, but it is like we have parts of it in Warsaw, parts of Minsk, and part in Vilnius, and we have to travel to read all this stuff. I use microhistory as research method. Although Jewish-Christian relations have been discussed extensively over the past half century, little attention has been paid to microhistory. Microhistory has a different variants. There are different histories. One of the most important feature is small scale local study, but not every local study is microhistory. This is very important to say. Reducing the scale is only a method to ask substantial questions. We have different. This is very important to see the different contexts, dense web of dependencies and relations. And the close reading of different sources should lead to a new understanding of broader social processes. Significant for this kind of study is the rejection of substantial and binary categories and analysis of different contexts, and attention on ordinary people, like simple ordinary people. I have here in my slide a quotation from Filippo de Vivo. I found this quotation very useful because, like, this is my understanding of microhistory, and this is the understanding I try to to work this way with microhistory, which is very important. Microhistory those are not examples, but experiments. And experiments allowed us to change a particular interpretation, and this is the way I'm trying to work in my broader project. And in the context of the Christian-Jewish relations, following Jonathan Lukin, I'm quoting, the crucial point is that there was a spectrum of interaction and sentiments experienced by Jews as well as by Christians. And I argue that the microhistorical method is the most appropriate to analyze the whole spectrum of the very diversified interaction. This is like the whole project and the approach. And I will go over to the sources and to economy. On 15th of February, 1686, Mayer Leibowicz, a Jew, came to the local court in Słuck and complained that Ilya Hładki, a Christian tanner, failed to fulfill an earlier agreement and did not provide him with the hides. The source example is taken from the court records in Słuck. It illustrates, like many other small stories, the Jewish-Christian economic cooperation. Compared to other countries, the research on Jewish history in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth is intensely focused on economic matters. The involvement of the Jews in the developing of the economic life of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth is one of the most important research topics, and it used to be in the pre-war classical Polish Jewish historiography, and this is still in the after-war Polish Jewish historiography as well. This is a big difference between the Polish Jewish historiography and the, let's say, West European historiography, when we had several years ago something like economical turn in the Jewish studies, and in the case of the Polish studies, we don't need a turn because we have it all the time. Analyzing Jewish economic activity, previous researchers have mainly focused on demographic and economic analysis and examination of conflict related to economic activity. Only marginal attention was paid to social dimension of Jewish economic activity. Gershon David Hundert argued that, I'm quoting, the indispensability of the Jews to the economy of the Commonwealth contributed substantially to their relative security and self-confidence. It was also a significant influence on the character of their relation with their neighbor. In my paper, I will develop Hundert's argument. I will try to show how the economy influences the character of the relations with the Christian neighbors, because the Christian were mostly the neighbor. I will ask. Sorry, I have a problem with it. I will ask three very simple and very simple questions. Firstly, did the Jews and Christians cooperate in the economic way? Secondly, did Jews and Christian, what were the characteristics of this cooperation? And thirdly, did economic cooperation change the perception of the Jews? Examining this issue, one has to consider different levels of relationship, presenting external context and considering whether deeper relation had been established is crucial. For the interpretation of the different kinds of relation, I use the concept of bounding and bridging, recently introduced to Jewish Christian studies by Klaus Hödel. Hödel understands bridging as interaction that merely help to tackle ethnic and cultural differences, and bounding practices that facilitate the development of intimacy and friendship among people. And I will use this both concept in my paper. Before we will go to the sources, I should say several words about Słuck. I think this is the most important town in the world, and but I know that not everybody knows everything about Słuck, and not everybody is doing a long project about it. Okay, where we are in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. This is the map, and we are here. This is Słuck, and if we looked at the map, this is Vilnius, the capital of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, and this is Warsaw, the capital of Poland. And you see where it's more or less is. The town is situated more or less 100 kilometers south from Minsk. Today, this is a very provincial town, heavily destroyed in the Second World War, and in the communist time, basically everything is new in the town, and there is still a Lenin statue on the main square. This is a picture taken several years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. And we have still the Lenin statue there. But in the 17th and 18th century, in the early modern period, the town was very important. It was a so-called private town. It means it belonged to a noble family. It was the Radziwiłł family. The Radziwiłł family was one of the most important families in the country. They were very important in the politics, and they were very wealthy. It was more like the inhabitants. It was from 5,000 to 9,000. It's different in different times. For the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, it was a quite big town. It was a quite big town because the towns in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth are a little bit smaller than in West Europe. It was a local economic and administrative center. It was a center of the Radziwiłł latifundium, and it was locally a very important economic point. It had military functions. It had a fortress and a garrison, and this is very important in connection with the Jewish community and with the history of the Jewish community. And what is one of the less typical features of this town? It was an Orthodox town. The majority of the inhabitants were Ruthenians, members of the Orthodox Church, and we had a very substantial Protestant community there as well. And what is not so typical it's not so typical now for Poland, but we had only one very small Catholic parish there in the town. Actually, there were almost no Catholics in the town in the 17th century. A second parish was established in the 18th century, but the Catholic Church was always very, very weak in the town. When we look at the Jewish, we don't have so many pictures of the town. The town was basically built by it was a wooden town and then burned up every several years, and they rebuilt it every several years, and we don't have any pictures, or very few pictures of the town from the pre-war period are still existing. And this is a picture of one of the monasteries, which was one of the Orthodox monasteries, which was one of the most important Orthodox monasteries in the whole country. Okay, the Jewish community. The Jewish community was established 1601. The first privilege given by the possessor of the town was given to the Jewish community. The privilege was more or less a standard one for the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. It means the Jews got the freedom of residence, permission to work in any chosen profession. The community was till 1638, the so-called Chmielnicki uprising. The community was very small, and then we had a huge wave of refugees who came to the town because it was a garrison, because it was a fortress, and they can hide, and they can hide during the war. And the majority of the refugees stayed in the town, and we had in the second part of the 17th century, more or less 35 to 40% of the population were Jewish in the town. It was different, it differed in different time, but in average, they were the number. We have a very big community with a Hekdesh, a school, cemetery, and it was a central hub for local Jewish settlements. We had a lot of smaller Jewish settlements in the region. 1691, this is a very important year for Słuck. It means Słuck became a member of the VAT Medinat Lite. We had the VAT Medinat Lite was the autonomous body of Jewish communities in Lithuania, and it was structured so that some of the communities were more important and some less. And 1691, Słuck became the fifth independent community. Means the fifth most important community in the country. And this picture which we have, this is taken from the sources, and this is somebody painted the synagogue this way. This is the only picture of the synagogue from the 17th century we have. Okay. Looking at the professional diversification of the inhabitants, we have to stress that the ethnic religious distinction was enhanced by professional diversification. You see it on the slide. Most Jews work in profession connected to trade, but only a tiny minority were wealthy merchants active in the international market. The majority supplied the local market, with many working as middlemen connecting foreign merchants with Słuck. Jews constituted 53% of our merchants in 1689, reaching to 70% in the 18th century, in the second half of the 18th century. Many merchants combine their work in the local market with running a tap room or tavern. The right to produce and sell alcohol belonged to the town's owner, to Radziwiłł. However, it was leased the Jewish community, and Jewish community gave it to other Jews. At the end of the 17th century, Jews ran about 80% of all tap rooms in the town. It means they sell all the alcohol. Only a few Jews worked as artisans. Among them, the most numerous were butchers and tailors. Both work for the Jewish community because the Jews need kosher meat and they need clothes which were produced according to the religion as well. By contrast, the Christian of Słuck work mostly in crafts, and those connected to leather processing it was the bigger scope. The growing importance of the Jews in the economic life of Słuck is not unique. Previous research has shown that this process was characteristic of the most towns in the early modern Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. A professional division in line with the religious ethnic divide was also typical in other towns in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. However, in the case of Słuck, the weakness of the Jewish crafts should be emphasized. Different levels of economic contacts and cooperation between Jews and Christians must be noted. The most basic form of economic contacts was the contact between Jewish seller and the Christian client. This is the most basic. Christians were the customers of Jewish shop, and this is so basic that we don't have many sources about it. It was not. It didn't cause conflicts. It was not typical situation of conflict. It means we don't have much sources about it. However, as in other early modern towns, in the town's main square, so-called rynek, was built up with stalls, was the place where the economic activity was concentrated. The number of stalls was not fixed. Nevertheless, since the second half of the 17th century, Jews owned a significant part of them. In the middle of the 18th century, they owned more than 80% of those stalls. Inhabitants and foreign merchants came there to buy or sell something. A variety of goods could be purchased there. The stall keepers offered clothes, fabrics, spices, small items like necklaces, mirrors, needles, and everything you need. From different countries. Usually, the whole Jewish family worked in the shop. Adam Teller pointed out that the involvement of wives, who most often works as the salesperson, determined the economic advancement and greater competitiveness of the Jewish enterprises. Christian burghers often complained to the owner that the Jews were doing better and that the Christian merchants could not compete. Christians were the majority of clients of the Jewish stalls. Jewish stalls were places to buy various products and get a small credit or loan. And this is very important because these were very small credit, really very small. They were often provided on pledge of cheap everyday items like clothes, dishes, or like clothes and dishes and any other cheap items. From an economic point of view, this business was not significant. Little money was involved in it. However, from a social point of view, this kind of cooperation is very significant. It has to be stressed that the loans were given without any official written confirmation. They were based only on mutual trust between the Jewish lender and the Christian borrower. We know about the majority of the loans only if the pledge were stolen and or some conflicts occurred, but the conflicts were very, very seldom. Similar kind of contacts were established at the tap room run by the Jews. Christians constituted the majority of the customers of the Jewish tap rooms. Those located by the market square and main streets of the town were especially popular. I did once a map of these tap rooms and taverns, and I did once a map of these taverns who had the most conflicts or who were most known from the court sources. And I had in the second part of the 17th century one tap room directly on the market square owned by the Jews, in which every second day something was happening. Really, it was the famous place in Sluck. The Jew was called Nochim Struchacz, and you could like at Struchacz home. There was every second day something happening. Court sources preserved several dozen cases concerning conflict disputes at Jewish tap rooms. They show an ambiguous picture of the relation. On the one hand, it is evident that Jews and Christians did not spend their free time together. They were never sitting together. It seems that they never spoke. On the other hand, all customers perfectly knew the Jewish owner. They always emphasized that they were at his home, which confirms some intimacy. This ambiguity is typical not only in the Jewish tap rooms, but sometimes in the connection to the owners of the stalls in the markets. A close look in the source materials reveals that the cooperation between Jewish and Christian merchants was much more complicated. It has to be noted that the Jewish-Christian merchants' partnerships were rare. There are many reasons for being so. Firstly, as the research of Natalie Zaman-Davis and Cornelia Aus has shown, Ashkenazi Jews generally compose their merchants network with family members. Strangers, including Jews and Christians, seldom took part in those enterprises. In analyzing this matter, one has to consider demography. Because the Jews constituted such a big group in the town, they didn't have to cooperate with Christian. There was enough Jewish partners. The shared language and religious rhythm of the work made it easy to work with fellow Jews. It seemed that social standing and wealth influenced the pattern of cooperation between Jews and Christian as well. It is striking that there is no proof of cooperation between Jewish and Christian economic elites. And by economic elites, I mean wealthy merchants and leaseholders active in the international market. One example, a very good example, is Elias Pawlowicz, a Christian merchant, member of the municipal authorities and wealthy merchants with international business connection to Königsberg, Breslau, Ukraine, and Moscow. He lived on the Kopylska Street, and the Kopylska Street was one of the main town streets. His direct neighbors on both sides were Leibowicz and Idelowicz, both Jews, and had a similar economic status. They were wealthy merchants and leaseholders and were active in the Jewish community board. The preserved source materials show no indication that those direct neighbors ever cooperated. Pawlowicz and his Jewish neighbors are not an exception. Other wealthy Jews and Christians behave the same way. In those cases, similar social status and sharing close neighborly space did not contribute to establishing economic relationships. It seems that economic competition reinforced by religious ethnic differences prevented the cooperation. Cooperation was much more common among less wealthy people and people who were mostly active on domestic markets or just start working as merchants. I have a very nice example of cooperation between Filip Koziulich, who was an Orthodox priest, and Lejba Izraelowicz, a Jew. Lejba Izraelowicz was not a member of the Jewish economic elite at Słuck. He was not wealthy and never had any function in the Jewish community. Izraelowicz was one of the many Jewish middlemen working in the town. The middleman connected foreign traders coming to the town with local merchants. Since they were paid for the advice and help, they worked with Jews and Christians alike. The majority of the official middlemen in the town were Jews. Many of them were merchants not wealthy enough to run their own business, but with enough knowledge and connection to help other people to do business. Izraelowicz connected the Orthodox priest Filip Koziulich, who wanted to invest money in trade with some Jewish merchants from Lwów, the town in Ukraine. There were very strong economic ties between Słuck and Lwów, because Słuck is more or less on the way from Lwów to the north on the trade road. These merchants came to the town with some goods and ordered products from Koziulich. And then Koziulich signed a contract with the Orthodox priest. According to it, the Jew has to go to Lwów, bring some goods to Lwów, and come back to Słuck. However, during the trip, Izraelowicz encountered a lot of unexpected troubles, which is why he finally came home without any products. He lost the horse and the wagon, which would belong to the Orthodox priest, and make debts on his way. Like many other Jewish-Christian joint ventures, this cooperation between Koziulich and Izraelowicz was limited to one specific contract, and like many others, it was not a cooperation between professionals, as you see from the story. Long-lasting cooperation between the same partners was very rare. Jewish merchants cooperated very often with Christian artisans. Most Christian artisans work in profession connected to leather processing. They were tanners, furriers, and so on. The geographical location and some peculiarities of the international market contributed to this narrow specialization. Furs and hides were the most typical export products from the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, and were exported to Western international markets. Słuck merchants, especially Jews, primarily because of the geographic location, worked as middlemen, importing the hides from east and shipping them to the west. And it was very common, like, to buy raw hides, process them, and sell process in the West market. In January 1686, Lejba Szlamowicz gave for processing more than 90 raw sheepskins to Homa Kościukiewicz and Ivan Trochowicz. Signing an official contract and registering it in the castle court, the artisans commit to finish the work shortly before the annual fair in the nearby couple. Other partners signed similar contracts, usually several months before other international affairs in the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. However, if we look close at these contracts, it occurred very seldom that the same people cooperate more than once. We don't know which factors were considered by the business partners' choice. The preserved source material suggests that randomness might be one of the most significant. Finally, speaking about cooperation, one has to mention the Christian servants who worked in the tap room. The Christian servants is a very huge topic discussed by many scholars in previous research, I will only briefly address. Although the Catholic and Orthodox Church prohibited the employment of Christian servants by Jews, it was common in the early modern Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth that mostly women worked in the Jewish taprooms and inns. They were especially needed during the Shabbat and other Jewish holidays because the Jews could not close the inns and taprooms during the holidays. The possessor of Sluck allowed Jews to employ Christian women. However, they should not live in one household with a Jewish family. The source material suggested only a few Jews were able to employ Christians. For economic reasons, the majority of the Jews was too poor to employ somebody and work only with the family. Nevertheless, if somebody was employed, it was a long-lasting cooperation, and this is actually the only one long-lasting cooperation in the economic sphere. Every kind of cooperation between Jews and Christians was based on trust and business honesty. Natalie Zemon Davis argued that covet, which means trust and honesty, was the basic value that determined the functioning of the Jewish merchants. Significant is that covet was not was not connected to religion. It was like trust and honesty to Christians and Jews in the same way. Different factors indicate trust in the sources. I spoke already about the small loans given without any written confirmation. Another issue is the use of different languages in written agreements. In general, the contracts were written in Polish and registered in Polish. However, the Jews could not read the documents. In most cases, they signed it in Hebrew letters. Moreover, Christians often accepted documents written in Jewish languages as a part of their cooperation. They could not read it as well, but both sides trusted that they knew what was written in those documents. The economic cooperation was an excellent way to learn about the religion and the way of life of the business partner. It must be stressed that before signing a contract, the partners met mostly in private spaces. Most Jewish taprooms were rooms in private halls. In some cases, there were only some spaces in the bigger rooms used by the family as well. So the customers has the opportunity to participate in religious and family celebration. We have a lot of sources that Christians are drinking beer, and on the side there's a Jewish family doing a circumcision celebration or wedding celebration, something like that. I have a lot of sources like this. It is striking how much Christians knew about the Jewish religion and Jewish religion and holidays, and how much Jews knew about the different religious communities in the town. One of the best examples is the knowledge of Jewish calendars. We have basically 3 different calendars in the town. The possessor had the new one, the Orthodox, the old one, and the Jews had the Jewish calendar. But in general, Christian business partner knew when the Jewish holidays were, and sometimes signed contracts according to the Jewish calendar. We have such contracts as well. However, did the cooperation and the knowledge gained through this cooperation change the perception of Jews? To answer my last question, I would like to analyze some conflicts and the rhetoric used in those conflicts. This part of my project is still a part I'm working on it, and I would like to work on it during my months here in Southampton. We have basically 2 types of conflict connected to economic activity ensues. We have, on the one hand, conflict between the town's government and the Jewish community, like general conflicts. In those cases, the Christian government tried to limit Jewish economic activity. Secondly, we have conflicts between single Jews and Christian, mostly former business partner when sometimes something went wrong, and then a conflict broke out. In the first case, the representatives of the town's government addressed the owner and asked him to limit the Jewish economic activity in the town. This was the usual way of solving conflict in the private estate. In the early modern Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, the town authorities were not able to do it by themselves. They have to ask the possessor. Conflicts between former business partners were solved in the local castle court. Lawsuits between town dwellers were a characteristic feature of everyday life in many early modern towns. David Frick argued that constant litigation was a factor that made a highly mixed society function relatively smoothly and peacefully, because I'm quoting, the society that litigates together stays together. In the second part of the 17th century, Christian burghers complained that there were too many Jewish tap rooms in the town, and that the Jews were unfair because they brought products in front of the town's wall. And these complaints are very, very often in the town. The opening of the shops and tap rooms on Christian holidays and closing of Jewish holidays was also a cause of conflict. The rhetorical strategies employed in the conflict are similar to typical anti-Jewish literature printed in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. As Magda Teter argued recently, the economic issues were central in the anti-Jewish books in the early modern Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, distinguished the Polish writing from the West European ones. In the government's complaint, the Jews are treated as organized community and accused of consciously acting to the detriment of the Christian. Similar rhetoric is found in the case courses involving single Jewish and Christian Americans. The Jews were depicted as insular, always acting against the Christian residents of Słuck. We have some arguments that the Jews behave in typical Jewish sly manner and aim to hurt Christians of the town. We have arguments that Jews, I'm quoting lyrics for Christian blood, and so on. This rhetoric seems to suggest that the cooperation and cohabitation did not influence the perception of the Jews. This is very strange because it's really the same rhetoric taken from written sources, and all those people who cannot read, they can repeat it in every conflict, and this is very strange. In this stage of my research, I'm not able to answer the question about the roots of this anti-Semitic rhetoric and of the function it had, but I see the difference between the social context and the rhetorics. In conclusion, it should be emphasized that a detailed microhistorical analysis shows the ambiguity of the Jewish economic activity in the context of the Jewish-Christian relations in Słuck. Jews and Christians cooperate on various levels. Jewish activity was crucial in the economic functioning of the town. However, it is difficult to prove that Jewish economic activity changed the perception of the Jews. And going back to the Hundage assumption, that it influenced the relation with the neighbors. Referring to Hodler's term, economic activity can be understood as bridging practice. It helps to tackle ethnic and religious difference. It is a way of gaining knowledge. However, it did not facilitate the development of intimacy and friendship among people. It is striking that the cooperation did not limit the anti-Jewish rhetorics and used in conflict. It did not change the perception of the Jews. Thank you very much.
Very much, Maria, for a very rich paper. I have many questions, but I want to open the floor. Tony, wait, microphone.
Thank you very much for your paper, which was great. So I wanted to take you back to definitions of microhistory, and if you could elaborate on how you see this as an experiment, as opposed to other forms of local studies and so on.
Should I answer now, or are you
Yes.
collecting? Okay, I think the most important for me, the part of the experiment, is that I'm not like taking a predefined categories, but like I'm defining it by myself. I'm like doing experiments and looking for the categories and not taking categories. Like, I think in my project, most important is, for example, integration. And I think integration is totally wrong. Here we have, I don't know, coexistence. I still don't have the term, but like the outcome of the project will be that I can define a new term, and this is what I understand as experiment. Yeah, this is more or less what I understand as experiment. I'm not looking like at the integration, but I'm looking what happened there and how can I call it. And I know, for example, that integration is totally wrong.
Okay. And yeah, Charlie.
Thank you very much for the paper. I wanted to ask you more about the gendered element of the relationships, because like you mentioned a few times about wives into certain jobs within the shops, and I wonder if you could say more about if gender plays a role in the wider economic relations, or is it a difficult tool to tell with the source basis?
Yeah, gender is actually in the economic activity. The gender is very important because we have a lot of very active like women active in the economic sphere. Mostly the most Jews work in family business, and it was basically so that the husband went like to buy products and so on, and the wife was staying at the place and the wife was selling it, and this was like she had the most context with Christians. This is very important. I cannot say whether there were different patterns of context between different genders. I cannot say. I don't see much difference. This is very strange because I see in my sources very strong women working, acting, going to the court alone, running business alone, and perhaps I should do more more research because I have it. It's a little bit surprising, but on this stage, I don't see any differences.
Thank you. Let me ask the Zoom audience if there are any questions before we go back to our in-person audience. You can raise your virtual hand or type in the chat. Nothing yet, so Peter.
There's something in the chat.
Oh, okay. We'll go for Peter and we'll come back to the chat.
Thank you for your fascinating paper. You mentioned at the beginning that Jews and Christians in these towns had different economic specializations. Can you explain why? Is it something to do with Jews being excluded from certain activities, or Christian, or moving into activities which Christians cannot or may not do?
Is it working? They were no excluded. We don't have any, like, they were allowed to do everything. They were members of artisans guilds, like the Christians, but I think it was something which was very typical in the towns of Lithuania Commonwealth. It was no exclusion, but it was like a practical partition. Like it seems that they like worked this way to avoid conflict. Like and other issue is that as I told, Słuck was a community of refugees. The majority of the people were refugees from the east, from the Khmelnytsky uprising, and those refugees, it seems that there were some of them were very wealthy people who like escaped with money and who came to a very empty town. Słuck in this time was really very empty, and like it was a space for merchants. It was a space where they could fit in, and they were not like it was more internal selection between those groups, and not like rules that they were excluded from something.
Thank you very much. So we have a question in the chat from Magdalena Dlaczkowska, who is thanking you for the interesting presentation and asking about the role of structures in shaping the relations between Jews and Christians. So did they depend on the agency of ordinary people, or to what extent they were predefined by the legislation, for example, the church teachings about the Jews?
I don't think that in Słuck, the church, like the Catholic Church, has something to tell, because surely there's some influence between the law, like the laws of the state and the church and the activity. But I think we have on the one hand the very restrictive policy of the Catholic Church, for example, and in Słuck it was not applied because we don't have any Catholic Church there. The possessor was Protestant, and he would never allow the Catholic Church to come into the town, and I think there is some influence, but I think we should more look at the practical way how the people behave and what they did, because this is more like I don't think that we will like there's a huge archive, and I can go with the structural thinking to this archive, and I don't think that I will find something new on the like behavior of the Jews and the Jewish Christian cooperation and relation. And I think much more important is to look at the people. Don't forget the structures, but really more focus on the people and see how the structures like worked in the praxis.
Thank you. Anne Summers is asking you to clarify what you meant by supplication to the owner.
They wrote a letter, "Dear owner of the town, we wish that you expel the Jews because they are doing not fair business." Let's say it in very, very easy. It means they were written letters asking the owner to do something, and actually the Jews acted the same way. They wrote to the owner as well, and on some point, like they agreed to some Christian question. They agreed sometimes some Jewish questions. It was like it depended on the subject, but it was not so that it was always that the Christians wrote something, wanted something, and the owner agreed only to the Christians.
Mark.
Yeah, thanks very much. Very interesting. I was really intrigued by the the massive fortifications you showed around the town and the fact that it had been quite an empty town and then this huge sort of influx of Jewish people arrived. What I was interested in was did both sort of Jews and Christians share the work on the fortifications? Was that shared out equally?
Yes. Yes. Sorry. Okay. Yes, they work together. The Jews had to participate in all the defense of the town. They were divided into groups, and these groups were like connected to space, like streets and in the town. And the Jewish street and the Jews were part of it as well. They had some obligation they have to take part in these military shows every year. They had to they were really members of they had to defend the town in the same way as the Christians. Actually they have when we look at on the rights of the Jews, they have more or less the same rights as the Christians. This is a very strange town because this is a Ruthenian town with no it had a so-called Magdeburg law, city autonomy, but it worked a little bit different because it was like a connection of this west and east town rights, and this connection gave the Jews like almost the same status as the Christians.
But they would be responsible to their own part of the defences.
Yeah. Yeah.
Presumably they sort of muster in their own units as
well. Yeah.
They were conjoined.
Yeah.
Am I right also in thinking that the Polish kingdom had restrictions in the Jewish professions, and that in the Great Duchy, Jews were allowed to own land, but not in the Polish kingdom. Yeah,
but I don't think that you can tell that this was generally in the kingdom because, for example, private towns
before the Lublin treaty.
Because, for example, in the private towns, you had like the owner was deciding about everything.
Yeah. Could I then ask a question about the non-Jews in this city? So you call them Christians. You explain that they are Protestants and Orthodox.
I think I did.
But were they Orthodox or were they Union?
No, they were Orthodox.
They were Orthodox.
Yeah, this is not so.
Unions.
No, there were no union in the town. This is not so typical as well. We have the Orthodox Church, and we have in the end of the 16th century in the Polish-Lithuania Commonwealth there were kind of union between the Orthodox and Catholic Church, and we have the so-called Union Church, which is more or less in the middle between the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church. It makes it simple. And Słuck was one of the exceptions. We have we had only Orthodox, and this was one of the strongest Orthodox centers in the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. Mm-hmm. It was one monastery was very, very important. It was not the head of the monastery was not an official bishop, but he had like the position of an Orthodox bishop, and they
reported to Moscow.
Yeah, after in the second part of the 17th century, yes.
Okay, and could you say a bit more about this? I don't know, 60% of non-Jews in the city. So were they peasants? Were they? Well, you mentioned that they were craftsmen, but which language did they speak? Would you identify them to the Polish Szlachta or the Polish nobility, or who were these people?
I will never use any adjective like Polish in connection to Słuck because it's I think this is the very convenient early modern period that we can use Ruthenian, for example. So they spoke Ruthenian, or this old Belarusian language. They were Orthodox, and they were the question was whether they were peasants or I would say they were town dwellers, burghers, in the meaning of East European towns, which were very agrarian. Like a lot of people did agriculture and lived in the town. This is typical for this kinds of town. They were like doing a little bit agriculture, artisans, very strong, like very many of them were artisans, and they spoke Ruthenian. This is very complicated in the town because the possessor of the town never spoke Ruthenian, and all these town archives is, for example, in Polish, because the possessor he was not Polish, but he was a Polish speaker, let's say. And the language situation in the town is very, very complicated. But actually, the street spoke Ruthenian and used the Ruthenian language as the basic language. We had in the town a group of people who were connected to Radziwiłł, to the possessor of the town, and they were nobles. Lithuanian nobles, they spoke Polish, they were mostly Protestants, and this is a totally different group of the inhabitants. Like there is a very strong division between this Radziwiłł people and the local inhabitants, and the Jews were more on the sides of the Radziwiłł people, and they were the Lord's Jews, let's say so.
Well, I was surprised when you mentioned conflicts that you didn't mention conflicts between Jews and the Radziwiłł and the magnates, because they have a very bad reputation, Radziwiłł, as being among the most.
They have very bad reputation.
So it's not.
Actually, the possessor of the town was Bogusław Radziwiłł, who is known from the Polish novel Potop, the most important Polish novel, and Bogusław Radziwiłł is the bad person in the novel, and every Pole knows that he is the really bad person. But from the economic point of view and from the state's point of view, the Radziwiłł were very good. They were very good in the estate holding and so on. And I would not say that they were very anti-Semitic.
There was no conflict with the Jewish community.
There was no conflict on the general level. More the Radziwiłł let the Jews live in the town, and they gave them very good opportunities. And on this level, there was not a conflict. There were sometimes conflicts, but there were minor conflicts about the rabbis who were active in the community and so on. But this daily conflicts.
Thank you very much. Are there any more questions? So I think we can then thank you very much for your paper. We learned a lot. We wish you a lot of success in our archives and library, and we hope that it will be a very fruitful stay for you this month here. We will hear more about your research, I hope, very soon. And feel free to go and talk to Maria. She's on the history corridor. And thank you again for this talk.
Thank you very much.